This week's spotlight will be on Peter Mark Richman, who played C.C. Capwell, number 2.
Up until very recently.
Yeah. This week's spotlight is on Peter Mark Richman, the second actor to portray C.C. Capwell on Santa Barbara. Peter Mark Richman was born Marvin Jack Richman on April 16, 1927, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. His father was Benjamin Richman, a contractor, and his mother was Yetta Dora Peck. Before becoming an actor, Mark Richman played football in the Eastern Pro Conference League. After an injury, he became a pharmacist and managed a drugstore for a year. He became interested in acting, and his first credit is playing a police officer in an episode of Suspense in 1953. Richman married actress Helen Landis in 1953, and they have 5 children. He was a member of the New York Actors Studio before moving to Los Angeles in 1961. Other roles before Santa Barbara include The Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits, The Wild Wild West, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Hawaii Five-0, Mannix, Mission Impossible, The Bionic Woman, The $6 Million Man, Dallas, Wonder Woman, Vegas, Galactica 1980, and The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo. His best-known roles were as the Pharaoh on 4 episodes of Electro Woman and Dyna Girl, and as Reverend Snow, Chrissy's father on Three's Company. Between 1981 and 1984, Richman played Andrew Laird, Blake Carrington's attorney, on 27 episodes of Dynasty. Richman was hired to play C.C. Capwell on Santa Barbara after the original actor, Lloyd Bachner, had a heart attack just before shooting began. This was ever only meant to be temporary, as the producers searched for a permanent replacement. Richman appeared as C.C. Capwell in 28 episodes, from episode 1 through episode 33, on September 12, 1984. After Santa Barbara, Richman appeared in episodes of The Love Boat, Knight Rider, T.J. Hooker, Star Trek The Next Generation, Swamp Thing, Batman the Animated Series, and the movie Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear. His most recent credit is a 2016 short film called The Final Show. In an exclusive 2011 interview with Santa Barbara Blog, Richman summarizes his time on Santa Barbara. In a soap opera, the scripts don't have much depth and are rather silly. I performed about 30 or 35-hour shows. It was enough. Hello, and welcome to Week 8 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We've just watched episode 36, originally aired September 17th, 1984. So, Jade hugs John. That is her dad, and Jade is back after 6 weeks in Los Angeles. He has come over just to say hi, but Jade convinces him to stay for dinner. Marissa says that's fine, and Jade says to Danny, I suggest we go for a ride so that, John and Marissa can be home alone together.
Mm-hmm.
So Danny and Jade go for a ride, and they go to the beach bar where Jade is surrounded by her usual admirers.
Including Warren,
and she's telling them all about how the amazing screen test she had in Hollywood, and how she was almost in 2 movies, and that she's going back after 12th grade and going back to continue her career as a star.
I actually really loved the scene with Jade and her dad, because they just seem to have such an affectionate relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's so unlike the relationship John has with Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just see the warmth there, which I really liked.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was fun that after all the adventures they've had in Hollywood, they end up back at the beach shack with Warren and the gang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jade, Marissa and John decide not to talk about Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And then John reminisces about how they used to go bowling and play mini golf, and he asks Marissa if she'd ever want to go bowling again, and she says that he could give her a call if he wants.
Yeah.
So Warren starts hitting on Jade again,
Mm-hmm.
just like before she left,
And she doesn't rebuff him, so Danny's upset by that because he thought things were going well with her.
Yeah.
And she says she just wants him as a friend.
Yeah.
So he's not, entirely happy about that.
He's in the friend zone.
Yeah. At the gazebo, Dominic pulls the letters out of the secret hiding place, and Joe comes up behind him with a gun.
So it was Joe. That's something we predicted last time.
Joe. He still doesn't trust Dominic, so he takes the letters. He says he's been following Dominic all day, even when he was breaking into Santana's place. He says he's going to find out who the real killer is from these letters and then turn them over, as well as Dominic, to the police.
Now, I don't really think Dominic is completely down with that plan. But he does work with Joe this episode.
Mm-hmm. Dominic says he has 3 friends willing to testify that he was out of the country on the day of the murder. Mm-hmm. And their only choice really is to work together.
Yeah.
So they hear a noise and hide, and it's Cruz and Santana arriving.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they can't find the letter. Santana said, I saw something in here earlier. And it's gone now, so she thinks Joe took it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of right. But Joe and Dominic continue to hide until Santana and Cruz leave. And then Dominic casually says he's sure he can find out where Kelly is.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joe says, let's go to Cruz's houseboat to look at the letters. So they do that, and they find baby hair in one of the letters.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads me to believe that our timeline is totally off for the baby being born. If she's sending a letter to Channing after the baby was born, he must have been murdered about a year after the baby was born. And Brandon must be turning 6 and not 5.
Yeah, so we have to find out a little bit more about this history to find out just how different events fit in with each other.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like Channing was still alive when Cece had Santana give the baby up. So
yeah.
Channing was on board with giving up the baby, or Cece talked him into it, I guess. So that's something I hadn't realized at all.
It was kind of interesting, this whole little episode with Dominic and Joe, and then Cruz and Santana coming, because Cruz is on Joe's side. So I actually think if it had just been Cruz coming along, that Joe and Dominic might have revealed themselves to him, especially since they go back to Cruz's houseboat.
Yeah.
I'm
wondering if Joe might be, or Cruz might meet Dominic.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, if they're at his houseboat.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that shows that it's Santana that they didn't want to run into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Dominic reveals that he already knew Santana was pregnant and had a baby.
Yeah, so Dominic knows a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to start asking why Dominic knows so much. You know, what is Dominic's pipeline to the Capwell family that he seems to know so much about the past and the present?
Because as far as we know, only Cece knew. And Santana knew about the baby. Rosa didn't know. Ruben didn't know. I doubt Mason has any idea. So yeah, that's very, very interesting. So yeah, literally as Joe's reading all the information about the baby in the letter, Dominic is saying simultaneously the same things that he already knew.
Yeah.
Then they turn their attention to Channing's diary, and they start reading some entries from 10 days before his death, and he says that he's learned a terrible secret, and it's going to destroy them all.
Yeah. And I'm assuming by them all, he means the Capwells.
Mm-hmm.
So, we obviously don't know what this is. I wondered if perhaps it had any connection at all with the ongoing feud with the Lockridges as well. So maybe this could even destroy the Lockridges. That doesn't come up in this, but who is them all? I'm assuming it's the Capwells, but I wonder if it's got even larger implications than that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if he would include Santana's family in that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Joe's about to read the final entry on the day he died, or the day before Channing died. That was how we left them. Now Cruz and Santana are at her place. He's just said he was going to drop her off, but somehow he's hanging around like Mason with his nightcaps.
No one ever really leaves Santana's apartment when they're supposed to.
No, she's continually having guests that won't leave. So she's they're sort of repeating a little bit of yesterday's discussion or last Friday's discussion. He says, she should stop pining for Channing after 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he kisses her again, and then she backs away and says, shouldn't mean to mislead him. And he says, I think I kind of misled myself.
Yeah.
So the sort of treading water in that same area still. He's still.
And there was almost a point in this scene where I wondered if she would reveal a little bit of her secret about Channing. I don't know. Maybe even not about the baby, but a little bit more about the depth of their relationship.
Because I think he said that she should have someone to confide in.
Yeah.
So, we could tell she was thinking, but we couldn't tell what she was thinking.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, in the Capwell Hotel, Lionel is having himself a bottle of wine in the linen closet as he's waiting for the action to start. He listens to Augusta and Peter, and I guess the linen closet is soundproof because he's heckling the entire time. Every time one of them says something, he has a comeback. Yeah. Which is hilarious.
Yeah.
And the gist of the meeting between Augusta and Peter is that she wants to hire him.
Yeah.
And she mentions that she is the one who said to Peter that the papers are in the house, and then Mason, raided it shortly after, so she blames him, and he said he didn't have anything to do with that, but Lionel's upset to hear that Augusta's the one that revealed the information that got to Mason.
Yeah.
Peter says he's so annoyed, basically, that he'd be happy to see the Lockridges run out of town. Mm-hmm. And what she wants him to do is to keep them posted on all of Mason's actions against the Lockridges. Mm-hmm. Because Lionel is useless. And that leads to a long discussion about him being a dilettante, and it alternates between Lionel rooting for Augusta as she's putting down Peter, and then Lionel rooting for Peter as he's actually coming to Lionel's defense a little bit against Augusta. He says, didn't he used to teach anthropology at USC? He's not entirely, incapable of earning a living.
Yeah.
So anyway, Lionel is drinking, the entire bottle of wine while this is happening, so he's getting more and more.
He's really come well equipped for this. He's got, he seems to have come with his own hors d'oeuvres and his own bottle of wine and his glass and his silk napkins. Like, he's really treated this as...
It's a good thing it's a soundproof room,
which
we didn't know.
And
Lionel may not have any way of knowing, but maybe Veronica told him that from the invoice.
Yeah.
Soundproof room. So Augusta once again uses the threat that she'll tell Kelly everything against Peter, but now Lionel's wondering, I hope everything isn't what I think it is. So Veronica arrives and tells Lionel that Peter will be hiding in the closet soon, that he should vacate.
They're going in shifts, basically.
But he's trying to figure out, asks Veronica to try and keep him out of there. So she, just as Peter comes in to check on the sound recorder, she said, I just checked on it all. It's working perfectly. And, I'll be in there taking notes, so you really don't need to be there. So she very easily talks Peter out of even opening the linen closet door. So that allows Lionel to stay in there. As they're vacating, Augusta, meets Veronica, and she wonders if Veronica is sleeping with Peter.
Yeah, she makes a little dig.
Yeah, she puts down Veronica a couple of times. Then Mason and the two bankers arrive. So Lionel listening, Mason tells them the plan, says that there was an error in the documents and that they want to, that a gentleman who owned all of the land on the waterfront at one time had started deeding it to the Lockridges for his death, and that this sort of, I guess, maybe got left undone because he died before that one deed could get properly witnessed and filed. So they're, saying, "Oh, aren't the Lockridges going to bid too?" And he says, "Oh yeah, but that Lockridge, this is his own fault. He would have noticed this before on his own if he wasn't out of town all the time. So he gets what's coming to him." Mason goes on a long diatribe against Lionel, which the bankers kind of sit there and take. And he basically says, "So I want you to guarantee me enough money to counter whatever Lionel bids."
Yeah.
So this sounds like it actually, I'm not sure how Lionel can counter this, because he's already having trouble just getting the reasonable amount of money he's asking from his bankers, and now he may need to come up with an unreasonable amount just to stop the Capwells from getting this land. So unless maybe he can thwart Mason in another way, if he, there may be some twist or something that he comes up with that makes it that Mason doesn't bid properly or something, and that he gets it without having to outbid Mason.
I think something like that. I feel like there will be a twist in this. But I thought one of the neat things about this scene, apart from, just the delight of seeing Lionel sitting there with his wine and hors d'oeuvres behind the two-way mirror, sort of heckling everyone, was it really shows us what we know is typical of Mason. So he's meeting with the right people, and he's keeping all his bases covered. He says, I want to be able to win this at any level. So he's, this is what we know about Mason, that he has a plan A, B, C, and D. But I also liked what it shows us about Peter. Peter is happy to just let Veronica assure him that the closet's in working order, the tape's working. He doesn't double check it himself. He's happy to just delegate. He's happy to just let her do all the work and take the notes. He doesn't feel he needs to be in there himself. So what we're seeing from this a little bit, and it kind of, I think, backs up Mason's assessment of him, is that he's really in it for the title and the power that comes with that. He's not actually in it to do the work of, being on top of things at the hotel.
It's interesting. I think when I originally saw this or heard this episodes, Peter didn't really make much of an impression on me at first. He is obviously the straw man fiance that needs to be defeated by the returning true love of Kelly, and up until now his sole attributes were that he dates high school girls and he cheats on everyone, which are not laudable things. But this week he's done three things that shift him into soap opera villain status. Instead of just fading away when Kelly realizes she loves Joe, he might actually stick around as a villain, because he punched Joe unexpectedly without warning. Then when Joe won the fight, he reneged on the bet to let Joe see Kelly. And then he installed this two-way mirror. So now he's doing actively villainy things instead of just passively sleazy things. So this may be a wrapping up of Peter as a bad guy, I think.
Well, we're really seeing more into Peter's modus operandi, that he gets by in life basically by scamming, like with the two-way mirror and whatever he's planning to use that for, and by mooching, basically. I mean, I assume as a teacher he did the minimum work to stay at Lyman Prep if he had time to be, fooling around with the female students and stuff. As a hotel manager, he's doing the minimum work to keep his title, and apparently has lots of time for scheming around with other things.
It's interesting just how quickly he, made this bond with Veronica against Mason. Maybe he's thinking everyone is the same, and then, if you find a like-minded person, they'd be just as happy to do something nefarious as you if you're against the same person.
And I think, actually, just as I think Mason has given him some really solid warnings, about the precariousness of his position vis-a-vis the Capwells. I think Augusta gave him a really good warning this episode too, which basically she told him that if you're going to play one side off the other, you don't be surprised if both sides turn on you.
Mm-hmm. So Lionel arrives home drunk, and Augusta's in her bedroom, and she hears him arrive, and he starts shouting poetic and lustful lines at her as he's stomping his way up the stairs, and as he gets to her bedroom, he flings open the door and shouts, "Daddy's home!" And that is how we leave things in Santa Barbara.
I wasn't really quite sure, and maybe it's a combination of the two, whether he was actually a little bit turned on by the whole conversation Augusta was having with Peter, and her.
Yeah, he was rooting for her at several points.
Or whether because he's seen all this, he's got a little more power in this whole situation than anyone else knows, and I wondered if he kind of liked that as well. I think he's a very interesting personality.
Yeah. I'm excited to see how he uses the information he gleaned to defeat the Capwells.
Yeah,
I'm assuming he will defeat Mason.
I'm assuming he will. I think Mason's birthday present is going to be disrupted somehow.
Mm-hmm. And then Cece will be disappointed in him.
Yeah.
Possibly for the rest of the series. All right, that is it for episode 36.
Yeah.
And we'll be back tomorrow after we watch episode 37 of Santa Barbara.
See you later.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We have watched episode 37 of Santa Barbara. Original air date, September 18th, 1984. Lionel bursts into Augusta's living room and makes numerous advances on Augusta, which she continues to fend off. He starts to use the knowledge he has from spying on them by telling her he has ESP and knows she's been with Peter Flint.
And she actually seems a little freaked out when he starts relaying accurate information about what she's been doing that evening.
And he starts quoting some of the things she said about him, like being a useless dilettante.
Yeah.
So she's kind of thrown off by that.
Yeah.
Anyway, he tries to turn that into a romantic encounter, and she's about to smash a vase on his head. And, fingers are bitten at various points. Minx, downstairs, hears all the ruckus and puts in some earplugs.
Which she apparently now just carries with her everywhere. So apparently this is a very frequent occurrence in the Lockridge house.
Yep. Ted and Lakin come home. They hear some smashing things going on, but Augusta calls down and says, "Lakin, go to bed."
And Lincoln's just like, yeah, this is what my family's like.
So they talk about the fact they have school tomorrow and that the summer went by so fast and they should go back to LA next year. And then they kiss.
Yeah.
Back at the Capwell Hotel, the bankers leave the suite. Mason and Veronica heads down the elevator with them, so that gives Peter and Mason a chance to talk. And Peter decides to blame Mason for Joe Perkins being free again.
Yes.
So Mason sends him to check on his food order and to put in some housekeeping requests, like having the windows washed.
Yeah.
Which gets Peter very angry. He says he's not an errand boy, and Mason pretty much says...
Mason really likes to treat him like a gopher. Yeah.
Mason says he has a lot he could tell Kelly about him. And Peter grabs Mason's lapels. So he gets very angry, and Mason's surprised that he lost control like that. Veronica comes back, and Peter has a moment alone with her. He asks Veronica to, go on with the date with Mason, but to try to steer the conversation to Mason's family so that maybe he can glean some information there. When they go in, she tells Veronica, Mason tells Veronica everything about the land deal and how he's going to get it. And then he starts talking about his family, and he compares Cece to Hitler and Attila the Hun.
Yeah.
Which Peter thinks is great. He's thinking he's getting some good information that he can maybe use against Mason. Now Mason puts down Peter as well, but Veronica defends him, possibly knowing that Peter's watching, or maybe she doesn't know quite how nasty Peter is and thinks he's a much better person than Mason. So Peter has some information. I was wondering if maybe he would somehow try to help Lionel win the auction.
I think he could do that just because he hates Mason so much. And so any little defeats for Mason are going to make Peter quite happy. And you could see him while he was watching this conversation. He was just like a kid in a candy shop. Actually, not so dissimilar from how Lionel was reacting as well. So there's something about watching these conversations behind the two-way mirror that really excites these people.
So it's already, as you said last time, it's paid for itself already, and now Peter's got a second, in just one evening, he's gotten a second list of potential things he can use against Mason. The important thing there is he's recording this all, so he now has a tape of Mason comparing Cece to Hitler that he might use against him, or he might just choose to play it at the party for fun. Cece's upcoming birthday party. Maybe Mason will get thrown out on his ear. That's what he's hoping.
What I actually find really interesting about this whole scenario is Veronica's role in it. She's really smart, and she handles these men all very well. And she's now in the confidence of Lionel, Peter, and Mason. And they're telling her, especially Peter and Mason, because we don't know just quite what her relationship with Lionel is yet, I think. But with Peter and Mason, she's apparently just come on the scene a couple of weeks earlier as kind of a temporary secretary. And Peter's already told her his biggest secrets, like about this two-way mirror and all of his plans. Mason's telling her everything about his life, everything about the intimate details of his business strategies and his relationship with the family, which we haven't heard before. So you can really see why Lionel picked her to infiltrate this group. She does have some real skills.
It's interesting how she just sort of subtly appeared as Peter's secretary in that first episode, and we didn't realize she was going to be a major player in anything. Now back on Cruz's houseboat, Joe and Dominic are looking through the diary, and Joe reads the last entry that Channing wrote. He says that someone else has found out about this terrible secret that he's discovered, and we must face each other. Now Dominic starts getting very agitated. It's like excessively agitated. And Channing warns that he needs to hide the journal because others will be in danger if they find out the information. So he also says he's going to write the full details the next day, but of course he died. So there is no final entry in the journal. In a moment of Dominic being unaware, Joe quickly takes a photo of him. So that annoys Dominic, and Dominic says, we're working together. You don't need that. Don't give that to anyone. Don't show anyone. And I promise not to tell anyone about Santana's baby. Of course, Dominic says that just as Cruz walks in. So Cruz says, Santana has a baby? Dominic runs out. But now we have, Cruz has seen Dominic in the flesh, so we have a witness that Dominic exists. Plus,
Joe's got photo evidence,
So then, now Cruz is going back over everything. Oh, I always thought that she and Mason were the closest, but she and Channing, I guess, now he's trying to go over all the clues he's had over the years. So, Joe says, he feels uncomfortable having all these personal letters, wants to return them to Santana. Cruz says it might be better if he did it himself. Partly for Joe's sake and also because he wants to see Santana and probably smooth things over a bit with the whole gazebo thing. So he goes to Santana. She thinks, aha, I knew you stole these. And then she says, no, Joe. He says, no, Joe had them.
Yeah.
So, but he says, Joe will keep your secret. And she doesn't see why he would. He says that he could be an ally. Cruz could be an ally. So she says she's been looking for her son, but that he can't help her.
Mm.
And I think that's because the only way to do it is to go through Cece. So that's not something Cruz can help with. So Joe finds a reference to the Yucca Dunes Motel on one of the the journal, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then he picks up an envelope and pulls out a photo that's in there. And it's a photo of a woman on a beach.
Yeah.
And Joe says that woman looks familiar.
Mm.
And there's an inscription on the letter that says, to LL with love.
Yeah.
So Joe wonders, who's LL?
Well, there's 2 LLs that I can see on the show so far. And I think Lakin would be a little bit young to be involved in any of this. So I'm assuming it is Lionel.
Seems to be the most likely LL, and grammatically, the director or the script chose to immediately cut to Lionel Lockridge, who was standing at the fireplace in the Lockridge living room, while Augusta and Lakin are on the sofa, and they're chatting, and Augusta's exhausted, so she goes to bed. I think she figures if she leaves while Lakin has Lionel occupied, she can lock her door and keep him away for another night. So Lakin asks Dad if he's going to leave again.
Yeah.
And he says no. And then she asks why he traveled. And he says, I wanted to escape some memories. Some things that I'm not very proud of. I don't want to tell you. So that makes me think that's related to the LL in the photo. And
Yeah.
somehow Lionel did something that Channing knows. Is this the big secret that's going to endanger everyone, or is this just something else Channing's discovered unrelated to the dangerous secret?
I'm assuming that, I guess my first assumption is that this was maybe an affair of some type that Lionel had a few years ago, maybe even with one of the Capwells or someone related to the Capwell household. That was a thought I had.
That would certainly be a problem if there's a big feud going on.
Yeah. Now, I mean, he and Augusta seem to be treating their marriage vows fairly loosely. But maybe if it's a person who is forbidden in some way, or who would, who by his association with them would maybe damage the Lockridge family in some ways, then maybe that is something for him to be a little bit concerned about.
That's interesting that Joe recognizes
Yeah.
the person in the photo and can't quite place her. So
Yeah.
that seems to, make it someone that Joe would know.
I wondered if it would be Sophia or someone like that, but I don't know. I mean, obviously there's a lot of other potential characters who we haven't met at all, or maybe even heard about. So
It looked to me like someone in a one-piece bathing suit with either a cap or a hat on, slightly obscuring the face.
now, mind you, we're not seeing this on the best quality video either. So
Although it's probably the best quality video that exists
yeah,
of
probably.
these episodes. I think we're going to end up at some point watching ones that are just as bad as my VHS tape copies.
Yeah.
So back at the Capwell house, Peter convinces Ted to call Kelly and just check on her. He at first does not want to, but eventually Peter says, I'll leave the room. You can talk to her on your own without my interference. So, Kelly says she's okay. Ted says Peter wanted me to call, and suddenly Peter comes on the other line.
Yeah, he's grabbed
And
the extension.
Both Ted and Kelly are angry at that, and Kelly says that she's made some decisions. And she's not sure when, but she's coming home soon.
Yeah.
So that sounds ominous for Peter, unless it isn't, unless it's ominous for Joe, if we know Kelly. she might backtrack on her previous pro-Joe stance again. Although now that Cruz has seen Dominic, if he, maybe Kelly will come in and say, okay, I know Joe was lying about Dominic, and go back to Peter, and then Cruz will tell her, oh, I saw Dominic. Oh, he's real? Okay, Peter, forget it. I'm helping you again. I'm going back with Joe.
Well, I have to say, it seems like there's almost no episode that Peter's in where he comes across as being in any way honorable or even remotely pleasant. And this is yet another example. I suspect one way or another there's going to be a marriage just because November is sweeps, and I think there has to be at least the promise of a wedding, so I'm going to assume that they are going to make up at some point, at least to get us to the wedding ceremony.
And then Joe will burst in with Dominic, saying,
maybe.
Look. Well, I have no memory of what happened, so I'm excited as you to see what happens with that wedding, and if Joe and Kelly ever do get back together, if they ever get Peter out of their lives. Or, now that Peter's doing nasty things to other people, even if somehow he does break up with Kelly and get kicked out of Capwell, he might just be a thorn in Mason's side in whatever capacity he's in, even if he's out of the Capwell, hotel chain. So.
And I do think that Cruz will continue to try to find ways to help Santana, even though, and she's right, there are very limited ways, but I think he'll continue to try. And I think he will grasp at some point what she is trying to do. He's already noted that she's starting to adapt some of Sophia's looks and, has taken a huge interest in Sophia. So I think he'll cotton on to that strategy as well.
Well, I think if Gina and Brandon ever come to visit, maybe now that there's been this heart attack on their end, Cruz is someone, that Cece doesn't expect, would know about Santana's baby. Maybe he would learn something unexpectedly about Brandon and then put it together and realize that that's Santana's son. Whereas they might be more, careful around Santana.
Yeah.
So, I hope we see them soon, and we'll see if Santana gets her son back eventually.
Yeah, that would be exciting.
All right, we will be back after watching episode 38 of Santa Barbara.
See you later.
Hello, welcome back to Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We've just watched episode 38, original air date September 19th, 1984. Augusta is having breakfast at La Mesa. Lionel comes in. She tells him she doesn't want his company, so he sits at the next table, orders exactly what she's ordered, and starts mimicking her as she's eating.
I imagine she finds that annoying. She seems to find that annoying. I would find that annoying.
Lionel takes his breakfast over to her table and starts feeding her various things. And there's a lot of romantic sausage eating going on during this montage of them feeding each other.
There's also a lot of little glimpses of other patrons in the restaurant giving them sort of disapproving looks and obviously not being quite as turned on by this whole thing as they are.
It's an elderly lady with a hat at La Mesa who might consider eating elsewhere in the future.
Well, when you think about it, maybe we wouldn't find that as appetizing either.
Well, Augusta likes it, and she's ready
enjoying
to rush off home with Lionel.
Yeah.
But they are interrupted by the doorbell, and it's Mike, Lionel's attorney, reminding them there's an auction. And Augusta says, why do we have to bid on something we already own? And they tell her the whole story about how Lionel's dad messed things up. And she says she wants to be involved in the auction.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Mason is bringing the auctioneer all types of bank documents, statements, lines of credit. He wants to make sure the auctioneer knows how much he can bid and that he intends to win.
Yeah, so this is typical Mason. Have all your possibilities covered. Have backup plans for A, B, and C. Everything in place. Everything that he needs right in front of him.
Ted and Lakin managed to slip in and out of the Lockridge place around Lionel and Augusta's arrivals and departures. They get ready for school. Ted apologizes to Kelly when she phones there about what Peter did the night before.
Yeah.
And Kelly has tracked him down there to tell him that she's coming home today and that she wants the family to meet at dinner. She has something to tell them.
Right.
So the kids go to school, and they're in the hallway, filling each other in about their summer adventures. Obviously, some of the rich kids at Lyman were in Europe for the summer. Jade wades right into the conversation with her Hollywood tales. And then Ted starts talking about the teacher that they're going to have for this course, Mr. Bottoms, who at one point had him kicked out of school on a previous semester. And Mr. Bottoms sneaks up on him, and it's Ray Walston playing Mr. Bottoms, who I know as from when I was a kid as Uncle Martin from My Favorite Martian with Bill Bixby.
A very familiar face, so even if you didn't watch My Favorite Martian, you'll probably have seen him on other shows from the 1960s and 70s.
So he's very strict, Ted says, and when they get in there, he himself says he's very strict. And if he learns your name, that might be a bad thing. So there are only 8 students in this class, and he says what they're going to do during, I don't know if it's the entire year or just the first part of the project, is they're going to simulate being married with randomly chosen partners from the class. So I assume a lot of guys are hoping that they get partnered with Jade.
Yeah.
And I assume Ted and Lakin are hoping they get partnered with each other.
So I guess I have a couple comments on this whole little scene we see play out. First of all, Lyman Prep does not have uniforms. So it is a very exclusive private school, but it doesn't seem to be a really traditional, old-fashioned British-style school. So there's no uniforms. There's only 8 students in the class. I noticed only 3 of them were girls, so I'm kind of interested to see how that marriage exercise is going to work.
That's right.
I also thought it was really interesting that, in some ways Jade is sort of the poor relative here. She's only here because her mom works in the kitchen. But she does not let that hold her back at all. And none of the other students seem to hold that against her at all either. So again, that makes me think that Lyman is maybe almost more of a progressive school than, as I say, a traditional sort of British-style prep school.
Maybe it helps that she's friends with Lakin, and she's put in a good word for Jade. I don't know if Jade attended there last year too. I think probably. But.
Yeah. It also occurred to me, remember, Peter used to teach at this school. If they've got 8 kids in a class, and he's been messing around with some of his students, I mean, that just shows how much risk he was taking. And probably how maybe well-known some of his antics were. I mean, that's not a large student body to be playing around with.
Yeah. There were probably rumors flying.
Yeah.
So, at Cruz's houseboat, Joe's going through the documents. He's being his usual gruff self with Dominic. Dominic says, I want to see the papers now. He goes, I'll show you a portion of the papers. I'll give you the rest when I'm ready. So, he hands Dominic the ashtray from the Yucca Dunes Motel. So that's what it was. I thought it was some sort of book last episode, but it was an ashtray. And Dominic says, this is trash. I've never heard of this place. But then goes on to say it's a dump. Channing would never go there. So clearly Dominic does know the place.
I kind of thought Dominic was just trying to throw Joe off the trail a little bit by just dismissing the ashtray right off the bat. That maybe Dominic recognizes it and doesn't really want Joe to pursue that particular avenue of inquiry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's saying it's more important, the entry, that they found that Channing had hired a private eye.
Mm-hmm.
And they think, Dominic says that's the more, the better line to follow through, to try and track down the private eye and find out what they know, because, that person could know everything that they're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And the entry we saw seemed to indicate that the private eye was a friend of the Capwell family,
mm-hmm.
and had a lot of access.
Mm-hmm.
So that sounds like it's going to be a fun thing.
Yeah.
Santana shows up, so now we have another person who's witnessed the existence of Dominic. Dominic leaves, and she thanks Joe for the letters,
mm-hmm.
but that's about it. She still believes he's guilty and wants him to leave town. So he tries to, get her to help him, but she's not interested.
No, I was really surprised when Santana came in that Joe didn't say right away, Dominic, this is my witness.
Did you tell Santana that I didn't tell Channing? Yeah.
Because he did that when Cruz came in. So I don't know if he just feels that maybe Santana isn't really prepared to believe him under any circumstance, although then why is he asking her for help? Or maybe he sort of feels like he and Dominic have rubbed up against each other enough on this particular occasion, and he's willing to just let Dominic go.
I mean, you'd think that if he, Dominic would realize Santana could help them.
Yeah.
Because she knows things that Channing may have told her.
Yeah.
That Dominic would say, oh, I am. But maybe Dominic's worried Santana will recognize him.
That's another possibility. Yeah.
Because even when Cruz came in, Dominic kept his head down so that the hat was obscuring his face.
Yeah, and Dominic really left in a hurry when Santana came in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that, I think, is probably as good an explanation as any.
Now, Santana was all over town here. She invites, she's at the Capwell mansion, and Cece says that he wants the south wing of the Capwell Hotel to be a mini San Simeon. And she says she's always meant to go there, which is odd. It's so close.
Yeah.
That she's never been there. Maybe she has, and she's just lying.
And San Simeon is known for, its style. And, when it was owned by William Randolph Hearst, he would bring in pieces of art and architecture from all over the world. So it is very strange that Santana's, who apparently is a designer and has a graphic background,
mm-hmm.
would not have ever gone there before.
Well, Cece says he's been there a lot because they're friends of the Hearsts,
mm-hmm.
and he'll take Santana there someday. But today, he suggests they go flying.
Mm-hmm.
And she thinks that's a great idea. So she goes home to change. Mason finds the time to show up and sees that she's getting ready for a date and wants to know who his competition is. And she says, I'm not going to tell you who it is. And he says, well, I know it's Cruz. And she says, well, if I'm not going to tell you who it is, I'm also not going to tell you who it isn't.
Yeah.
So he still doesn't know his dad is his competition. And then Cece is flying the plane himself.
Yeah.
And he takes her over the Reagan Ranch at one point, and then they fly over State Street, and I don't know, we see some buildings with that familiar pink tile that I wonder if that's the courthouse area or something like that.
Yeah, I think if you look at the sort of details of the Capwell house, they actually do echo a lot of the architectural styles in Santa Barbara, and especially that main courthouse.
Mm-hmm,
which is,
the Spanish stuff.
Yeah.
Peter plays the tape for Veronica of
mm-hmm.
Mason comparing Cece to Hitler and Attila the Hun.
Yes.
Augusta shows up to ask Peter to find out what Mason's bidding in the auction, and Peter blows her off, even though she tries her usual threats. Oh, what would Kelly think?
Yeah.
But he tells her there's no way he could because he has no access to any of that information. So, and he says even if he did, he wouldn't tell her.
Yeah.
And then he kicks her out because Kelly's coming home. She's phoned him and said she's on her way.
Yeah.
Now, Augusta then runs into Joe at La Mesa, and Joe mentions that they've arrested the two men who attacked him on the day he got released from prison.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, when we find out who they're working for, then we'll find out who was involved with Channing's murder. Augusta's very thrown by this. And
Yeah,
she says,
she's not.
the two may not be closely related, she says. So she's overplaying things there.
We know that Augusta is the one behind that attack.
Mm-hmm.
And she does seem to freak out a lot whenever Joe seems to get close to solving the murder. And, she's obviously really trying to keep tabs on him. I think it is possible she's right in that it doesn't necessarily mean she committed the murder, but that she is implicated in something closely related to it, perhaps.
Joe says he thinks they are closely related, and
Yeah.
he's going to plow ahead with that.
Yeah.
Augusta tells him, as part of her, I'm your friend, Joe tactics, that Kelly is back in town.
Yeah.
Which she had overheard at Peter's place. And also she tells Joe that Peter is very upset.
Yeah.
So this is all useful stuff for Joe, and hopefully, that'll keep Augusta in his good graces.
Yeah.
Now Minx complains to Lionel about the painting that got knocked off the wall the day before.
Yeah.
And then she notices that he's looking at her rubies, and he says, "Oh, I'm, planning to sell them." And she says, "You're not, squandering our money again, are you?" But he doesn't tell her it's for the auction, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe they're trying to keep that from her, because that would be a very, disappointing to her if she found out they could lose that land, right? So
Exactly.
he's hoping probably to make things right before she finds out.
I thought we learned 3 things just from this little exchange. First of all, we learned that Lionel has, sort of had to sell off some things in the past to fund some of his extravagance.
Mm-hmm.
We learned that there's more than one Lockridge sibling because Minx refers to, or Lionel says to her, "Oh, you wouldn't do that to your firstborn." So if he's the firstborn, there must be other borns as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we also learned that Minx actually controls. She actually controls the Lockridge fortune.
Mm-hmm. She says she has all the shares, so it must
Yeah.
be, they must have the family assets in a company for, tax purposes.
Yeah.
But she has all the shares, and she says she can vote him out. So
Yeah.
he's obviously on the board of directors of the Lockridge Family Trust, or whatever it is called.
Yeah.
Then later he's in a car with Veronica, and Veronica plays him the tape that she got from Peter, and they listen to the Attila the Hun bit, and Lionel says, "I'm going to make a copy. I'll see if I can use that at the auction."
Yeah, so it's interesting. Both Peter and Lionel, not realizing it, have gotten a hold of the same tape. And they're both very excited about how they can use it as leverage over Mason. Perhaps thinking of using it in slightly different ways for different goals, but both of them are very anxious to get whatever leverage they can over Mason.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to think if Lionel, if Mason is close to outbidding him, and Lionel plays the tape and says, "CC will hear this, so your gift will be meaningless to him." I can't see how else he could use it. So
Yeah.
then if Peter plays it at the birthday party anyway, suddenly Kelly is sitting on Peter's desk. So
Yeah.
she's back in town, and he comes in, and he's very worried about what she's decided, because he said, "Oh yeah, it's about Joe."
Yeah, yeah.
So then you. So, he says, "Oh, are you leaving me?" And she says, "No, well, you might leave me after you hear my conditions." And she says, "One, you and Joe will never fight again.
Mm-hmm.
And two, I can see Joe whenever I want." So Peter is very concerned by the thought of Kelly hanging out with Joe whenever. And she says, "I'm not going to do anything bad with him. I just want to be able to talk to him when I want to." So.
Yeah, I can. This is one of the few times where I can actually empathize slightly with Peter because that's, and it's not really great if you're engaged to someone and you're going to be married in a couple months and they just want to hang out with their ex.
Well, I think the good news is the wedding is going ahead, so we've got November sweeps to look forward to.
Yeah.
That's probably, from a writer's standpoint, a way of extending this for 2 more months.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, Kelly would have to make a Joe or Peter decision a lot earlier. But now she's chosen Joe and Peter, so she can drag things out for a while. At the auction, Veronica gives Mason a call quickly and says that Cruz went to the airport. So I'm not sure why Cruz went to the airport, but that's related to the Santana tracking. So we'll see how that plays out next time. And then the auction starts, and Augusta walks in, and they seem shocked that she's there. And Lionel wants her to leave, and then Mason says she shouldn't be here. And then Lionel says, "Are you kidding? Of course she can be here. She's an interested party. She owns half. She owns half of everything." So they settle in, and the Lockridges give their first bid, and it's $2 million.
Which will buy a bachelor suite in Vancouver.
For 50 acres of waterfront property in Santa Barbara in 1984.
Yeah.
And Mason smiles at that offer.
Oh, yeah. He knows he can beat that, I think.
Yeah, but I wonder if I wonder if Augusta somehow has some money that she can contribute. Maybe she owns some land. Well, no, because she's from a poor family, right? I don't know. Maybe she pawned some things. Maybe she pawned some things, that Lionel gave her, so she'd have a few extra $100,000 to put into the kitty.
Who knows? Who knows what Augusta was doing on her way to the meeting? Maybe she managed to get a copy of the tape, too. I mean, we don't know. It'd be funny if everyone was playing that tape. But I do feel like she's there for a reason, and she has some sort of hand she wants to play. Yeah,
I think she'll be able to contribute, and then maybe Mason will still trump it, but then Lionel will use the tape. Or maybe Lionel won't have to use the tape, and he can save it for something else, or Peter can be the one to use it against Mason.
I think that tape is coming out eventually. I'm actually thinking that its big moment will be at the birthday party.
It makes sense. It seems very, a perfect time to unleash it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Anything else for this episode?
No. This was a great episode.
New character, Mr. Bottoms, and I think there may be some more new characters showing up soon.
Oh, that'll be great.
We never did hear from Cece what happened in L.A. with Gina.
No.
I guess he has no one to tell.
No, he can't tell anyone. That's his little secret at this point.
We will be back after we watch episode 39 of Santa Barbara.
Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome back to Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We've watched episode 39. Original air date September 20th, 1984. We are at the high-priced auction of the Lockridge beachfront property.
Yes, we've been waiting for this for a while now.
Now, Lionel's first bid yesterday was $2 million. Mason bids $4 million. Then Lionel $5.5 million, Mason $7.5 million, and then Lionel $10 million.
Yeah.
And Augusta says she wants to talk to Lionel, so Lionel takes the opportunity to slide an envelope to Mason, which contains the tape of him likening Cece to Hitler and Attila the Hun, and also a note saying if he bids a farthing more, then the tape is going to be played at Cece's birthday party.
Now, we've actually seen Augusta getting kind of agitated through this whole thing. So she and Lionel kind of have it out in the hallway while Mason's listening to this tape.
Mm-hmm. Lionel says 10 million is all he could scrape together.
Yeah.
And that they have to win. But Mason manages to outwit them by bidding $10.5 million.
Yeah.
So Augusta's very upset. Lionel says this could kill Minx, but at least they have until Cece's birthday before she finds out. Now I wonder if they could just offer Mason 10 million, give him time to change his mind about the tape being played.
I feel like something will happen between now and Cece's birthday. It does seem like a little bit of an opening for them to find some way perhaps to increase their leverage on Mason or do something to try and get the property back. Mm-hmm. Remember, we don't know what Minx might have up her sleeve or what powers she might have available to her when she finds out. Yes. She might very well be upset. She might very well, have a freak out, but she might have some solutions or some levers that Lionel doesn't really know about or can't access.
Yeah, we don't know how far away Cece's birthday is. So
yeah, that's the other thing.
It's a little bit tense as to how much time they have. So
also, we need to see how the other side of this plays out. Mason knows about the tape. He's heard it. He's got a copy himself, but there's a lot more out there that will be made available to CC on his birthday. Mm-hmm. How is Mason going to diffuse this situation?
Yeah, I think Mason's in trouble, and he knows it.
Yeah.
So he immediately suspects Veronica of taping him, and she said that doesn't make sense, because he'd be the first person he'd suspect. So they go to the hotel, and he still doesn't believe her, but he searches for a microphone and finds one hidden in the plants, which I guess is connected to the speakers in the secret room. So he doesn't find the secret room, even though he does jostle against the mirror while looking for the microphones. Mm-hmm. So then he calls in Peter and blames him completely, as he's running the hotel division. So.
Yeah. So I was a little bit curious actually about this microphone that he finds, because it when he picks it up, it looks like it's just the head. It doesn't seem to be obviously attached to anything.
I assumed there was a wire on there, but...
But if there had been, couldn't he follow that wire and find the secret room?
You would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, he, for one reason or another, he still doesn't know about the secret room.
Mm-hmm. Which makes me think it'll be used against him again.
Oh, I think so. I think it'll be used a lot.
And then once he finds it, he will start getting Mason or Santana and Cece in there and anyone else.
Oh, there's all kinds of possibilities.
Yeah, I think Mason will take over the secret room duties from Peter at some point.
Oh, I'm sure the secret room would be right up Mason's alley.
Mm-hmm. Cece goes to visit Santana after their fun day of flying, and Santana said she loved seeing the city from a new angle, and they talk about the Hearst Castle again, and how Santana's never been there. Cece's father and William Randolph Hearst were very close, and in fact, Cece's dad bought adjoining property to the Hearst property, and Cece has precious memories of there. So we may find out. I assume that's got something to do with Sophia, perhaps?
Possibly.
So Santana offers Cece an omelet, but he's actually got a meeting. He has to go, but they end up kissing.
Yeah.
After Cece leaves, Mason arrives. He's pretty sure that Santana was with Cruz, because, he had been out to the airport. He ends up telling her about the tape, that he said something about Dad, and then it got taped, and it's going to come out. He's certain it's going to come out.
Yeah.
I think he says, if someone wants it to be played, it will be played. So he ends up getting Cece's omelet, I guess, as a consolation.
Yeah, I think this was a little bit of symbolism that Cece's too busy and has too much of his own life to have an omelet, but Mason's kind of desperate enough for the omelets.
Then Mason phones his secret source to find out Cruz's whereabouts, and apparently after he got to the airport that morning, he got on a helicopter immediately to go to the Capwell rig, and he's been there all day by himself. So Mason realizes he can't have been with Santana.
Yeah.
And demands to know who her secret lover is.
I don't think that's the way to win over Santana.
No. Joe phones the motel, the Yucca Inn, Yucca something Inn, to find out exactly where they're located, and zips right over there.
Yeah.
But Dominic is already there.
Yeah.
And Dominic says, pays some money to the manager and says, I want to look at your register from 1960. So Dominic knows exactly what he wants. And Dominic flips through and finds the entry, apparently, that he's interested in, and tricks the manager into going to get him some coffee and tears out the page just as Joe arrives, and Dominic sees Joe's car arrive and hides.
Now, thinking about this, 1960 would have been 19 years before Channing's murder?
Yeah, we remember from Channing's gravestone, he was born in 1961.
Right.
So this would have been about a year before that.
Or 9 months before Channing's birth.
Possibly. Could Dominic be Channing's real father?
Well, since I think Dominic is a woman, I think it's more likely that Dominic is Channing's real mother. But I suspect there's a significance to it being 1960. Now, I don't know how close in age all of the Capwell kids are. So, but we do know Channing's age.
Yeah, we know it from his gravestone.
Yeah.
And we know Ted's 17, and Kelly graduated from high school 5 years ago.
Kelly's the same age as Joe, I assume.
Eden and Mason were not sure. I mean, Mason's obviously the oldest. So Joe's not quite as... Well, I mean, Dominic was pretty aggressive with the manager. Luckily, his family's owned the place for decades. But Joe, gives him some money at first, but then once he's out of money, he starts grabbing his lapels and saying, I need to know, what, well, the manager mentions Dominic. Someone else looked at it. And then Joe demands to see the same document, and then sees the page has been ripped out, and then wants to know what the person looked like, and realizes it was Dominic. So.
Generally, I think Dominic tends to be a little more suave about how he approaches these things.
Yeah, although he was pretty aggressive.
He was aggressive. Yeah, he was aggressive.
It's interesting. I mean, after the last meeting where Dominic freaked out, you think Dominic would have headed straight to that motel to get that book. So, instead of waiting a day for daylight. But I wonder if that motel's anywhere near Hearst Castle.
That would be another interesting point, too. Yeah, we don't know quite where along the route it is.
So, the question is, by zeroing in on that 1960 book, Joe is now aware of 1960. Whereas, I'm sure if Joe had showed up on his own,
he would
have maybe looked through the current year's register, but certainly wouldn't have.
Or he might have looked at 5 years ago.
Although maybe the age on the postcard might have made him, maybe there were some clues there. Like, so is that postcard from 1960? I wonder.
Yeah. And so what does that tell us? I mean, if this is related to Channing's birth, is it Channing maybe Lionel's son?
LL.
Yeah.
That is a possibility. Or there could be another LL too.
Yeah. Because that would have huge ramifications if you think about how much CC has sort of tried to see Channing as sort of a replica of himself. And then if it turned out Channing wasn't even related to CC, that would be a huge revelation.
That would be devastating to Channing.
Yeah.
And he did say it would destroy us all. So that could be what he's talking about there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing is that obviously Channing got this stuff somehow.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's two things that I think of. One is this detective that was mentioned.
Yeah.
Did the detective find this ashtray from the Yucca Motel?
Yeah.
And if so, did the detective take a photo of that same register?
That's right.
Because
That's
the
right.
page was there, it wasn't ripped out.
Yeah.
But the other thing that occurred to me is, could Channing have found all that stuff in the secret cubbyhole in the gazebo and started using it himself after he raided it?
Yeah, that's a possibility too.
Because that's between the Lockridge and Capwell properties.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It does, to me, definitely point to some sort of yet another point of shared nefarious history between the Lockridges and the Capwells.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, we heard a week or two ago CC make this big statement about how his youngest 4 children all looked like their mom, and they all have her blonde hair and her coloring.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lionel's kind of got that coloring, and Warren's got that coloring.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not completely out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, Peter cannot believe Kelly's decision when he hears it, that she wants to be able to see Joe whenever she wants. And she forbids him from doing anything to Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And she says Joe has a place in her life.
Yeah.
So Peter's not happy about that. Then suddenly we get this scene that seems to have been inserted from wherever. Kelly and a woman and a boy are going into or out of a room in a place that I didn't recognize, that may have been a hotel, because there may have been a number on the door. And I at first thought this is the people that Kelly was staying with in L.A., because they said they were from Bel Air.
Yeah.
So, which is possible that that's what happened. But the woman says, "Oh, thanks for inviting us to Santa Barbara."
So my interpretation of it, I mean, Kelly's been away for the last few episodes. And she tells Peter that she's been staying with a friend of hers in Bel Air.
I don't know. Did she say Bel Air before?
I think she said Bel Air.
Oh, okay. Well, then it's...
And it sounded to me... I assumed that the woman and the young boy were the same friend. And that they had... I guess after the tragedy or the mishap that's happened to them recently.
Because they talked about losing someone.
Yeah, that Kelly then offered them a room in a Capwell hotel to come up to Santa Barbara and just, kind of get a change of scene and maybe recover a little.
And as we know from when a few episodes ago, when Cece was on the phone with Gina, someone she was with had a heart attack.
Yeah.
So could this be Gina and Brandon?
Well, that was my assumption. No names were mentioned.
It's weird that they didn't mention names, that this was just one little scene in the episode.
But that's my assumption, that this is Gina. The boy was about the age we're expecting for Brandon. And maybe it was her husband who had a heart attack. We don't know.
Well, it sounds like he's dead then.
Yeah.
Because Kelly mentioned loss. So now we have another single woman.
Yeah.
With ties to Brandon in town.
And she's friends with Kelly, so we know that this person is connected previously, at least with Kelly, not with the other Capwells.
Now, she seems too old to be a friend of Kelly's from school. Like, she seems quite a bit older than...
Yeah, she does.
Even though Robin Wright's playing 5 years older than she is. She seems to be closer to 30 to me.
Yeah. So. I thought so too. She seemed like an older friend, so maybe they didn't say definitively she was a friend from school, did they?
No, I'm just trying to think.
Yeah.
Why is she a friend of Kelly's?
Well, I assumed maybe she was actually a friend of the family's, and that Kelly knew her through that.
Well, I trust someone will get introduced to her in a future
I'm
episode.
sure we will find out
And that
soon.
would give them an opportunity
Yeah.
to give the backstory.
Because if it is Gina and Brandon, we'll probably see quite a bit of them.
Now, Kelly finally gets Ted and Mason and Cece together. Or did she get Mason?
She
there?
did get Mason at the end. Yeah.
And tells them her plan of seeing Joe whenever she wants. And then Cece's like, "Don't tell me you think he's innocent." And she says, "Well, I no longer, think that he may be guilty."
Yeah.
And Cece jumps up, from his chair. And
Yeah.
that was the end of the episode. So
Yeah.
Cece is outraged. And Paul Burke is a good actor for playing outraged
Yeah.
as Cece Capwell, definitely.
But
He looks angry all the time.
Well, he does. He looks, although he does seem to be warming up to Santana in a way that he didn't before he was Paul Burke. So.
That's true, because he's playing it as if Cece definitely is interested in Santana.
But it does occur to me, and we'll see how this plays out in the next episode, that while Cece is probably outraged and definitely questioning his daughter's judgment on this, we've also seen that he's got a lot more in his life than just worrying about Joe. So I'm not sure he would be pursuing this matter in the way that Peter will be pursuing it, or even Mason, possibly. I think he'll express his outrage and then move back on to courting Santana and, dealing with his oil rigs and that kind of thing.
I think so. And if Brandon's in town, that's another thing to distract him, right? When Brandon was in Bel Air, he wouldn't have been going down there every day or whatever.
Yeah,
Although he did call them in Acapulco once, so.
Yeah.
Well, that is it for episode 39, and we will be back after we watch episode 40 of Santa Barbara.
See you later.
Welcome back to Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We finished episode 40, original air date September 21st, 1984.
Mm-hmm.
Kelly looks for Joe at the Perkins house. Marissa is excited to see Kelly for the first time in
She
years.
looks so happy. We don't see Marissa look happy very often.
No.
She's happy to see Kelly.
And Kelly's positively giddy throughout this episode.
Yeah, which we don't see much either.
Joe shows up at Dominic's door. Dominic says, "How do you know where I live?" And he says, "I followed you here once." So Dominic's in full disguise. He answers the door pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Joe demands the missing page from the register, and Dominic pretends not to have taken it. Says, "Oh yeah, I was there, but the page was already missing."
Which we know is not true.
Yeah, and Joe doesn't really believe it, but Dominic says, it's not relevant. And then Joe says he found an article about Sophia Capwell found wandering in the desert.
Yeah.
24 years earlier, near the Yucca Dunes Motel. So that is a tie-in to that motel. And Dominic says, "Nope, still not relevant to the murder."
Well, it definitely fits the timeline of the registration book. And, it's right near the hotel. And this is not a hotel that, is going to get a lot of traffic. It's not on the beaten track. So I think Joe's right. I think this definitely ties in. And I think it is a very interesting development. It tells us a little more history about Sophia. It adds definitely an element of mystery to all this that I certainly didn't see coming.
Yeah, Sophia, in the article, the police say that Sophia said she'd been held captive at that motel for several days, but refused to name her captor. So that's a very odd occurrence that's not been spoken of before.
And I guess my initial theory of that might be that she'd had an affair with someone at the hotel and had concocted this story to keep Cece off the scent of that, maybe. That was one thought I had. Or maybe she really was abducted and there's a whole backstory there that we have no idea about. But hopefully we'll find out.
Yeah, I don't remember any of the stuff at all, so I'd be really interested to see what comes of that.
Yeah.
When Joe gets home, he's looking at the photo of Sophia from the newspaper. And this is the first time we've seen Sophia's face. in any context. She's actually quite visible in that newspaper photo. It's a huge photo.
Yeah.
And Joe says that it's the same woman from the photo that he found with the, to LL, all my love inscription on it.
Yes, and we should say it's quite a glamorous photo. That she's got her hair up, and remember she was a budding actress when she met CC. So this looks like kind of a glamour shot.
Mm-hmm. So Kelly comes over and tells him about the deal that she laid down for Peter and the family. And Joe's ecstatic and tries to give her a hug, but she pushes him back and says, I'm still marrying Peter.
Yeah, but Joe just looks so happy when he sees Kelly and she gives him this news. We've never seen Joe look this happy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Cece brings Santana some wildflowers that he picked on the way to her place. They're kind of scrubby looking.
Yeah, kind of a ratty looking bouquet, but Santana's very gracious in receiving them.
Mm-hmm. He tells Santana about Kelly's announcement, and of course, Santana's not happy, but she thinks Joe is innocent and wants to know if she's still getting married to Peter. And Cece says, yeah, she hasn't broken off the engagement. So
yeah.
Later at the house, Ted mentions to Mason and Kelly that Eden might come home for Dad's birthday. Cece walks in just at that time. But Mason said, oh, she's picked a good one to show up for, because I've got a big surprise for Dad.
But he's also skeptical about whether she'll show up, because apparently
she didn't show up last year, and when she said she would.
She's not very predictable.
She's like the Lionel Lockridge of the family.
Yeah, I'm going to be really excited to meet her, if we haven't already.
Cruz is there too at one point. Cece's offering him a job running his entire oil operations, offshore oil operations.
Yeah.
And at double the salary.
Mm-hmm.
Cruz said, nice. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
So he takes the job. So I can't imagine what someone who's already getting paid a lot with a double salary would be making back in '84, but it's not. It sounds like Cruz is pretty wealthy. After a year of working, he's going to have a lot of money. So he's probably wealthy already, putting out oil fires. That's probably a very high-paying job.
Specialized skill.
So yeah, we don't. It's not really something we think about with him living on a houseboat, but being able to pay cash for it. But he's probably got a lot of money.
Yeah, and when Cruz and Cece meet, and Cece gives Cruz this offer, it is at the Capwell house, and Santana's there, working away on her designs, and Cruz sees her and Cece, and again is very struck by the fact that she is very interested in Cece, and that there may be a bit of a romance brewing there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just find this so interesting because Cruz has cottoned on very quickly to the fact that Cece is Santana's suitor, whereas Mason, who is someone who lives in the house and works with Cece, has no idea. And I mean, that's kind of an interesting blind spot for Mason, because he's got his little tentacles everywhere. He prides himself on knowing everything about everybody, and yet he is blind to the fact that his own father is actually seducing his crush.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because at one point Mason whispers to Cruz, Santana's seeing someone. I thought it was you for a while, but I had you followed yesterday and it wasn't you. And it's like, don't ever have me followed again.
Yeah, exactly.
Then Cruz has a moment alone with Santana and says he realizes what's going on.
Yeah.
And she says, I'm falling in love with him.
Yeah.
Which is surprising to me, especially since
he
he looks like Paul Burke now, and it seems he seems like a much older man. Even though the ages may not be different, he looks like a grandpa, whereas, that Peter Mark Richman could have pulled off an old dad. But
I had caught a little bit of that, I think, a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, Paul Burke is a very different CC. We see him actually today, and he's kind of got this tan and these big sort of aviator glasses, which were popular in the late 70s. So it actually makes him look kind of older. And,
Mm-hmm. That's the look I
Yeah.
remember him having as CC.
yeah.
Now Lionel and Veronica are at that hot tub again, and we find out it's Veronica's hot tub. It's actually at her place.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a house or the back of a condo. Seems like, people come and go pretty easily there, so I'm thinking it is a house.
It's early in the morning, too.
It's early in the morning before
Yeah.
work. They're just, Lionel passes on having a hot tub with her. They fill each other in on what's happened, and Veronica's worried a little bit about them figuring out that she gave him the tape, but
Yeah.
tells him that Mason took her to the hotel to find the microphone and everything.
And she's got a little bruise on her arm.
That's
From
right, because
where-
Mason grabbed her.
Yeah,
when
because
he
he was
bounced
so
her.
upset. And this is something that Lionel finds very upsetting, that Mason would actually hurt Veronica.
Mm-hmm.
So this seems to add a little bit of fuel to the fire. Lionel's already very upset at potentially losing the beachfront property. He doesn't like Mason anyway. And this little bit of behavior on Mason's part just sends him that much further into revenge mode.
So Peter phones to say he's coming over,
Yeah,
and then almost immediately Mason comes over, so Lionel has to hide in the bushes.
yeah.
And Mason gives Veronica the most expensive perfume in the world to apologize for suspecting her,
Apparently more expensive than La Vie.
I guess, unless it was
Yeah.
Levy.
Well, it could have been La Vie.
We'll see if someone comments.
Yeah.
That she smells like Sophia and Santana. So, Mason talks about destroying Lionel.
Yeah, he's in Bond supervillain mode at this point.
So then later, Veronica is talking to Peter, and Peter thinks she made a copy of the tape for Lionel, but she said, "No, I made 5 copies, like you said, and one of them vanished from my desk." So, and then later someone said they saw Lionel on that floor. So she's making it as if Lionel stole the tape, which sounds like a good cover, actually. Peter believes it. So. And then Peter goes to visit Lionel and mentions that he wants his help getting Joe out of town, and also that he wants to work together with him against Mason. So he tells Lionel that Augusta slept with Joe, and Lionel kind of covers for Augusta, saying she wouldn't do that sort of thing, and then turns him down on working against Mason, which I was surprised by. But he says to him, "You're a small-time social climber and opportunist. I wouldn't dream of having anything to do with you."
Yeah. Well, I think maybe there's a couple of issues with that. And remember, Lionel saw Augusta and Peter in the room together. And I don't think Lionel is naive. I think he knows that Augusta doesn't tell the truth and probably does have a wandering eye. But he's also seen how Peter treats Augusta in private when he doesn't think anyone's looking. So I think that plays a certain role, not only in him feeling protective or, whatever sort of strangeness his relationship with Augusta is. There is a certain protectiveness there that they have for each other. But also just because he sees Peter as an operator. And I think he knows maybe not to trust him.
He says, when Peter tells him about Joe, he says, any information coming from you is highly suspect.
Exactly.
So even though he knows that's true, he gets that dig in at Peter.
I have to say, I'm always very impressed with Veronica, just how easily she seems to be able to manipulate everyone, even when she's in the crosshairs, as she was this episode. She manages to handle Mason, she manages to handle Peter, and she manages to handle Lionel. And so far she's kept them all in balance.
Now, back at Lyman Prep, we've actually haven't heard anyone except me refer to it as Lyman Prep yet, but it's appeared this episode and the last one on a binder or something on Mr. Bottom's desk. It says Lyman Prep, but previously they've called it Lyman Preparatory School, but that's what I remember them calling it later. So,
Yeah.
So of course, I think Diane mentioned in the last podcast segment that there were an uneven number of boys and girls in the class, and Mr. Bottom says, I've got 8 slips of paper in here for 2 A's, 2 B's, 2 C's, and 2 D's, and you're all going to pick to decide who couples up. And I thought, is the camera going to pull back to reveal they've recast one of the, the guys in the back row to be a girl? And no, there's still 5 guys and 3 girls. So the nerd guy, whose name I don't know, suggests, hey, why don't we make 2 of the couples menageries? Which is hilarious, because I was just thinking, if it was modern day, someone they could have a throuple, and it didn't. It occurred to me that someone would make that same suggestion 35 years ago. But Mr. Bottoms doesn't seem too taken aback by that.
No.
But he says, no, we'll just have 2 men living together as married. So that's...
So the 80s were a little more woke than I remembered them being. Because remember, gay marriage is not legal anywhere at this point.
So none of the guys were too upset by
Yeah,
that.
they were just
the one guy just
whatever.
says, well, if I'm paired up with a guy, I make sure that I'm the husband. That was the only semi-objection that anyone had to it. And with Mr. Bottom's back turned as he's writing down the results, as people call out their letters, Jade takes the opportunity to swap around several of the papers so that Lakin and Ted can be paired together.
That was nice.
So that the nerd next to her can be paired in the male couple.
And she gets the cute blonde sitting at the back.
I don't know if that happened on purpose, or was that an accident?
Yeah, you could see her switch out,
So it turns out Mr. Bottoms and Ted have a bit of an argument, just over nothing really. And
they've got history, though.
But Ted mentions that the rec hall is shut down, and they could use a break. Or maybe he doesn't know it was shut down, but Mr. Bottoms says it was shut down. And that it was his idea,
and he mentions budgets as well.
That's true. He says Ted said we pay a lot to come here, and we said, well, we're running out of money.
Yeah.
So that's a bit odd.
Yeah, I actually kind of agreed with Ted on that one, because if their parents are all very rich, except of course Jade, I would imagine they are expecting the best of everything. So to have whole buildings and facilities shut down would be strange, especially since this is a day school, which means there don't seem to be any borders there. It's not way off in the country somewhere where people aren't monitoring it.
It's interesting that, a couple of them say, yeah, we have very rich parents. Jade immediately says, except me.
Yeah.
She's not ashamed at all about her being there because her mom works there. So that's an interesting character attribute. And Mr. Bottoms mentions being in constant touch with CC about Ted, and that he was the one who recommended Ted get sent to military school.
Yeah. So. Mr. Bottoms actually seems to have a lot more power than the average person who works in a school like this. I can't imagine Peter having that kind of power to shut down facilities and liaise with the wealthy parents about their kids.
It'd be interesting if there's ever a reference to Peter made by Mr. Bottoms in the future for some reason. It'd be interesting to see what the other teachers thought about the former shoe salesman who was employed there.
Yeah. I'd also be interested to know just how many kids go to this school if they have these large facilities. It seems like that would be a lot just for a small number of students. I wonder if this is just one form of the senior class, these 8 people, and if maybe there's a lot of other groups of kids at that same level who are taking different classes.
Now, later the girls are hanging out in the classroom, so I guess they did get a break, just not a place to go. And they're discussing how they need a place they can go and make out. and they decide that they're going to look for a place that they can all hang out, but that the girls can be in charge of it all.
Yeah.
And the boys are seen in a new set, which looks kind of like the eating area in a senior's home.
Yeah, it does.
I'm guessing it may be the cafeteria.
Maybe. I couldn't place it.
Yeah, I mean, it had some chairs, and they were kind of hanging around, like, not at tables, really. So it was hard to tell if there were eating tables there. And then there was, like, a little, almost like a bar-looking area, like if you were in a hotel eating area. So I suspect that's what it is, because it seems to be a common area, and it looked too weird to be one of a room. Like, I guess there's no dorms there anyway. So, and the boys come up with the same idea. They need a place to hang out, and they need to be in charge. Warren has decided he's going to work for Lionel. He's gotten some great contacts while working at the as a lifeguard at the club, the yacht club. The lifeguarding at the beach is done for the year, but he's still got lifeguarding year-round there if he wants it, and he runs it. But he's decided, after talking to Lakin and thinking it through, that he wants to work for Lionel. Lionel says, well, make sure you're not doing this because the family's pressuring you.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of Cece, right?
Yeah.
You know, Cece would say, oh, yes, you should be in the business. So Warren says, something's bothering you, Dad. And he says, well, it's Mason Capwell. Warren says, oh, Mason Capwell's a skinny little weasel or something like that.
Yeah.
And Lionel's thinking, I've got to find a way to get at Mason. And then out of the blue he says, I wonder if anyone's ever considered the fact that Mason Capwell has never been married. This is an unexpected
That just kind of came out
direction.
of nowhere. And I always, how Mason has been set up is that, he's kind of a ladies' man. He's always chasing after one lady or another. Which I guess has possibilities. We've already seen, in a way, Lionel explore those possibilities with Veronica, kind of planting her in Mason's path. But I really wondered what else Lionel had in mind with this line of thinking.
If he thinks Mason is secretly gay, I don't think he's going to find any evidence. So he may spend a lot of time trying to find something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And but I mean, it's telling that he would think that would be a big negative in Cece's eyes, right? So,
yeah.
Maybe that's all we've learned from that, is that Mason Lionel thinks that would be a way to tear down Mason in front of Cece.
I mean, I can think of other paths they might choose. Like, Mason gets very single-minded, as he was with his beachfront property. It seemed to me, if you tempted him in a certain way, he could very narrowly focus on trying to achieve that, and maybe you could slide something in behind his back while he was focused on something else, or something like that.
So maybe Lionel could come up with some kind of false allegations that would distract Mason enough while he was trying to, put out the flames, because he's also potentially running for district attorney.
Exactly.
That may be what Lionel's thinking, a way to mess up his election. Because Mason said earlier he's going to destroy Lionel by, ruining every piece of his life, one at a time. Yeah. So maybe Lionel's taking the opposite tack, saying, okay, bring him down in front of Cece with the tape. I'll wreck his political career.
Yeah.
So that could be what he's actually doing.
Yeah. I mean, we'll just have to see. But it is very interesting to see these two characters, Lionel and Mason. It's interesting that the conflict is between Lionel and Mason. When Lionel was introduced, the expectation was it was going to be him and Cece. But we're seeing the setup between Lionel and Mason. And it'll be quite interesting because they're very different characters. Lionel is this kind of, man of the world, off just following his heart and his own interests, whereas Mason is doing the opposite. He's actually not interested in being DA or any of that, but he's following the path he feels he should follow, and he is doing it in a very tenacious way, which is the exact opposite of Lionel up till this point.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting. It'll be really interesting to see how this unfolds.
So it's kind of a not a super exciting cliffhanger ending this week.
No,
but
a bit of a fizzle.
I was gonna actually ask you after Paul Burke was introduced, if you want to take a guess at who the next actor is who'll be leaving the show.
I don't know. I guess my question would be: is it a change in the role? Like, do you mean a?
Well, either way, the actor's gone. Whether he's gone for good, or killed, or sent off, or recast, right?
Okay.
So, which actor do you think would be the first to be missing?
That is hard. I really don't know. I don't think it'll be Cruz. I think Cruz will be there for the long haul. I don't know how much staying power Joe will have in the long run once his story with Kelly kind of comes to its conclusion. I guess I would sort of guess maybe one of the Perkins, maybe the dad.
Put you down for John Perkins.
Yeah, put me down for John Perkins.
I showed Diane an interesting photo, which was a cast photo that must be coming up very soon. And there are 6 cast members, I think, on it that Diane hadn't met yet.
Yeah.
And I looked ahead at IMDb, and they're all being introduced in the next week or two.
Oh, that'll be exciting.
But I said it was very interesting because one of the other cast members is leaving. And this photo must have been taken during a very short window of time. And I looked, and it must have been taken somewhere between episode 57 and 61. So that's like a 1-week point where that particular cast was on the show.
And I haven't, I looked initially at IMDb, but I haven't, I didn't really read very much at all, and I have been keeping away from it, so I don't know much at all about where the show's going or who's coming and who's going.
Cruz was at the top of the list of most episodes.
Exactly, so that's why I assume Cruz is going to stick around for a while, since the actor seems to have been there a long time. But yeah, I have no other ideas, and when Misha showed me this picture, I took a guess at who I thought some of them were, but yeah, I've just got to wait to see who's going to be introduced.
One of them was someone that I think I know who she is, but with my audio, having only listened on audio for most of them, this character must have come and gone before I really even, had a sense of what they were like. So.
Yeah.
All right, well, that will do it for week 8. And we will be back next week for week 9, where I think we get 2 or 3 more new characters introduced.
Oh, that'll be exciting.
So that's always exciting. And have we had any plot lines resolved this week?
Well, we did receive some resolution on the whole beachfront property thing, and at least up to the negotiation. Now, I still think there is a gap in time between, I guess, this property changing hands and Cece's birthday. So while I think it might just carry on and Cece gets presented with it at his birthday, I still would like to see what happens when Minx realizes what's going on, and just to see if there's any more twists and turns in the fate of this property.
And new stories. Well, we've got Mr. Bottoms this week. That's a new little school, which sounds like the whole year, the whole winter part of the year. We have the beach stuff and the Hollywood stuff for the summer, and now school for several of the cast. Did we know Danny was going to Lyman?
Danny's not going to Lyman, is he?
Oh, okay.
It was a big thing.
Who was
about
Ted
that.
Hanging out with then at that thing?
Well, he was hanging out with Danny, but I don't think Danny's going to Lyman.
Oh, so that okay. So then, yeah. So that was weird then. That whatever room Ted was in, he was talking to Danny.
Yeah.
And it didn't really click with me. Why is Danny there?
Yeah,
So,
it was odd.
So
And
maybe it wasn't a place at the school.
yeah, I wondered if it was somewhere else.
Maybe it was a seniors' home that's halfway between Danny's school and Ted's school, Santa Barbara High and Lyman Prep.
I'll also be interested to see how Peter's relationship with Kelly evolves, because he was really frantic and upset this week because he realizes that if he loses Kelly, he's not going to be a Capwell.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could see this episode especially, he's starting to see all of it maybe slipping away a little bit. And so I really want to see how he's going to win back Kelly, because I think he has to do more than just trying to get rid of Joe.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to see how he handles that.
He probably doesn't want to entertain the idea of crawling back to Mr. Bottoms and asking for a job.
No, I don't think he wants to go back
that's
to
how
teaching.
the season will end for the Lyman storyline. Peter going back there, hat in hand, saying, "Have you got something for me?"
Yeah,
Something with lots of girls in the classroom. All right, well, we will see you next week as we start week 9 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Bye-bye.